Welcome, everybody, to the first episode. We're bringing on a couple of folks from the spaces over on X. We go very deep over there in conversation around ICP and Web3. These folks are pretty bright. I feel very happy to have them and to help get their insight out into the community. We're going to talk first about what sort of brought everybody to ICP, what kind of separates it in their mind. I'll be happy to share my insight as well. We have Chris, Zin, and Swissy, again, very prominent folks on X, and I look forward to hearing their thoughts on ICP in this episode.
Swissy, why don't you take it away, man? Yeah, what got you into ICP? Where did you come from? What's your background in crypto?
So for me, man, probably back in 2015, end of 2015, like Bitcoin around $400. I was in Italy at the time, and my options were buying Yeezys or buying a Bitcoin or buying a few. And then I was like, oh, maybe this has something. And then obviously should have bought a lot more. It's probably a lot of people would think, but then followed Ethereum a little bit. But again, more is like this, the investor side of crypto. My big thing was more of finding value, like smart contracts. Okay, like there's a technology behind here. And then a little bit later into Cardano. So Cardano got in, I think, right at 2017. And just that vision of not necessarily the ETH killer, but just like the motivation to improve on technology. I was hooked. And then years and years on Cardano. Like Zen and I have gone back and forth talking about this, but many years in that ecosystem. And then finally, like everybody, I feel like has a spot on ICP in the back of their heads, like whether they're Web3 native or not. A lot of it goes back to the ICO, and then it's like blank. There's nothing afterwards. But then, yeah, eventually found the tech. I watched Jan's video on YouTube for Chain Key. I've probably seen it 3 or 4 times now. But yeah, once you see a little bit behind the curtain of what ICP can do, there's no going back. And now I've slowly moved a lot more into the ecosystem, and then now started to build. Like we're working on party hats, which we can talk maybe a little bit later, and other things, and contributing to the spaces. I have a passion for AI as well, but I think professionally I'm more product and strategy. And I've worked with several foundations throughout the years. And yeah, just you spend a decade in crypto, you start to see certain things.
Great. Yeah, I first bought Ethereum actually in 2016. I was living in Ohio and I knew nothing about crypto. And I don't know what I first heard, but I opened up a Coinbase account and I think Bitcoin was 2 grand and Ethereum was like 200, 300, $400. And I bought some Ethereum and sold it in short order, right? And I didn't really touch crypto or look into it after that first foray into the space until summer of 2019 when I kept hearing about crypto. I think there was probably some news related to price action and coins pumping and all this money being made, Bitcoin's at 20K, something like that. And I finally was like, you know what, there's something here. I'm going to look into it. And I was thinking back, I was like, man, what was that first query? And I think I went to IBM and their website and they had a primer on what a smart contract was. And the rest is history, man. I started looking into YouTube videos and courses, and I found Charles Hoskinson on YouTube. And the way he talked about Cardano and what he was building and the technology behind it and the engineering foundation and how much work went into that caught my interest. And so in 2019, I basically went pretty heavily into Cardano and was very tunnel visioned for about 4 to 5 years around Cardano. I pretty much missed the 2021 NFT cycle on Ethereum. I was just tunnel visioned on Cardano, and I've always been interested in how this technology is actually going to be used by the world. And then, yeah, as time progressed and you just start to learn things, crypto Twitter is such a fantastic resource for finding alpha, getting information, finding people who are sharing interesting technical perspectives. And I was on a bunch of different social media platforms like Twitter and then some lesser well-known ones. And some guy had hopped in and he mentioned something about ICP and, I believe this is going to be a $3,000 coin or something like that. And I was like, huh. And so then, back to YouTube, I think it was probably Jerry Bainfield or Bobby. I found their videos and I just threw some money in, but then kept going a little deeper, a little bit deeper. And I've always loved, like, all the way back in 2019, it was like learning about NFTs. This stuff, these images aren't on chain, right? They're using IPFS, they're using Arweave, something like that. And so when I was understanding that ICP was this full stack cloud computing platform that offered all of the sort of traditional properties of a blockchain, as well as storage capacity and computational capabilities, that was the light bulb for me. That was the light bulb moment where I said, wow, like this is really different than than everything else that I've come across in the space. And so, yeah, from there, I think probably 2023, I started to lurk. I had all my Cardano stuff going on, and I was just lurking in ICP, just finding who to follow, finding who to read, looking into all the founders. And that went on for quite a while. I was just lurking. And then it got to a point where I have love in my heart for Cardano, but what was happening there, the narratives, they weren't exciting anymore. I was seeing too many sort of roadblocks, and ICP had offered this sort of unified approach to doing a lot of the things that I thought were interesting all in one sort of monolithic system. So I created a separate Twitter account. That's the Zen account, and just joined the community, started meeting people on Spaces. I probably met you, Mike, very early on because you're always on Spaces. Met a bunch of the guys, Drowny, Trevor, Jordan, Dan, all those guys, and just slowly got into it. And just finally, like, I spend essentially 99% of my time now just on ICP, researching it, staying up to date with all the developments, and looking for ways to connect with builders and other community members and just see where I can contribute and how we can help this space move forward. And I think the ICP general space that was a very natural thing that happened. And it seems like that's just one way to contribute. And so we're doing that. And hopefully, yeah, in the future, I think Swissy and I are going to be getting into some product development stuff, some stuff related to agents, building some agents that will help projects think critically about how they develop their brand strategy, their content strategy, their marketing strategy, how they think about their customer bases and whatnot. So it's really exciting. ICP has been around for 4 years, but I feel like right now, it feels like we're at the beginning. That's where I'm at. I'm like, this is just the beginning. So really excited to just be in this community, continue interfacing with all of the wonderful people. I'd love to hear from you, Chris, and from you, Mike, what your journey was into the space. But yeah, thanks for having us on, by the way.
Yeah, thanks for making the time to come on. So what's up, guys? I'm Chris. I'm more of a content guy. I've been editing video for 14 years now professionally. Also been flying drones professionally 5-6 years. I bought some Bitcoin in 2019. I had a coworker who was like, yo, dude, just put $100 on this thing. Trust me. And so I kind of just aped in $100, then started doing research then on what blockchain is. And I resonated with it very deeply immediately as the truth. Like, one day our art's going to be on the blockchain, our music's going to be on blockchain. I resonated with the implications it has on sovereignty of our money, our data, right? All that stuff. I was pretty quickly sold on it, but there was no real like manifestation of that stuff then. And only till I discovered ICP did I kind of wake up and be like, oh, it's happening finally. And towards the spring of this year, I was just convinced that I needed to get away from fiat, right? I had a lot of money and savings just sitting there burning. Obviously, inflation's mooning, and it doesn't seem like that's going to change anytime soon. So I started diving back into crypto. Obviously, there's thousands of crypto, so I started doing my research, and essentially, I just started playing the crypto casino for about a month. Like, I started aping into stuff and doing my research after the fact. Classic, right? But I had like Litecoin and a little bit of Cardano and some Ethereum and some Solana. And yeah, I was binging on YouTube, and I came across one of Jerry's Litecoin to Zero videos. And it was just a huge wake up call. He helped me realize the questions that I should have been asking all along. Like, what does the team of this project look like? Like, what's the actual functionality of this project? Can they store photos on chain? Obviously not. And so through Jerry, I found Bobby elaborated on the technical aspects to a much greater degree. So I really just like binged all of his stuff and kind of became an ICP maxi in a couple of weeks. And I've been obsessed ever since with ICP. I mean, I've been like Zen, Swissy, Mike, all of us every day. I'm constantly consuming as much as I can about new developments, new partnerships, new prospects. And yeah, basically my mission is to apply my creative skill set with the video production and help get the word out about all this stuff, right? So I've been trying to network within the community. I've connected with Terry from AgriDAO, made a couple videos for him that I'm super excited about, but I'd like to continue that theme and promote as many valuable projects as possible through video. So that's kind of why I'm here.
Really cool.
And again, I've been in the spaces just listening to you guys for months now and have learned so much. So it's really an honor. You guys are like heroes in my eyes. It's really an honor to have you on and to continue to learn from you guys and help get your message out to the world.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. And I couldn't agree more. I feel like it's going to be great to bring the space community to the podcast sort of platform. And for me, I found myself looking for outliers in investments. And when crypto became pretty popular in like 2020, I just remember the seriousness of it. And I just saw this coin, Dogecoin, based on this dog. And I was like, oh, okay, I get this. It's going to be funny. It's lighthearted. It's unique in that way. It's not trying to do anything crazy. It's just something that's funny. And it made sense to me. I had just sold a property and I aped. I put well into the 5 digits on Dogecoin, and it went from 4 cents to 25 cents. And I cashed out, and it was really quite a eye-opener. I had never experienced gains like that ever in my life. I didn't think it was possible. But the same thing that drew me to Dogecoin about this outlier situation, I just began asking, this thing is cool and all. It's fun and exciting. The community gets it. The people get it at some level. Elon's talking about it. There was some catalyst there. But I just wound up asking, is there going to be a crypto that does have some function? Is there going to be utility at some point in the future where a chain could perhaps compete with a company on Wall Street, where they're like fighting for market share? And I just remember sorting and taking devastating losses. Obviously, I'm sure most of us have taken some tremendous L's, but by the time I had stumbled upon ICP, it wasn't like a perfect opportunity, but I had taken enough losses to be willing to lock it up for 8 years, take the human element out of the equation, which was the factor that it was my blessing and my demise, the human element. And I just realized that I want to ride a technological sort of wave. And I don't want to ride it for a day or 2 weeks or a month. I want to ride it for 8 years. And since then, I want to say I bought a year and 6 months ago or something, like maybe a little less. But I did get my first order was in the twos. So I did pretty much hit the bottom. I was watching Jerry. I was under the impression that I was eventually going to be making my entire investment as a return per month if I was willing to wait long enough. It was just a crazy mind thesis. Like, there was 1/100th the capabilities that we see now. ICP has really grown and matured since then. I think we're about to strike into some of the utility use cases, and we're starting to see partnerships now at a pretty high level in the blockchain space. And I'm excited by everything related to ICP. I think it's going to be super relevant. These videos we like to put out, I want to say, we're just trying to highlight some key distinctions. And hopefully in time we'll realize that some of them were correct.
Yeah, that's
Great.
phenomenal. Like, in terms of the value of something like this that you guys are doing, I think it's phenomenal. And it's super interesting to hear where you guys are coming from in the sense, like, ICP is an incredibly difficult chain to grasp, which I think really the people that grasp it the most are probably, like PhDs, cryptographers, whatever, that are actually working on it. And then distilling that is not an easy thing. So I think, like, these spaces and having the value add that you guys bring is phenomenal. So it's awesome to see how all of us here and a lot of us in the space have converged into kind of joining forces and spreading the message. So it's really cool to see.
To piggyback off that, Swissy, 100%, I kind of see it as my mission to help bridge the gap between the tech heads and the laymen, right? Because the truth is so obvious to us, it's not obvious to my mom or people I work with, or everyday people. So, like, how do we make people wake up and realize, like, you guys don't actually own your social media content, and why does that matter? And social media is just one narrative of so many, right? But, like, how do we incentivize people to care about this stuff? How do we spotlight the importance of these issues in a way that motivates them to act?
Off the jump, the first thing that comes to mind when you say that is seeing a gigantic chain like Hedera perhaps reaching the end of their own capabilities. Their own accord reaches its final destination, and that destination appears as still short of what the market kind of demands when it comes for enterprise AI agents. And there's something to be said. Why would they make that shift to ICP? And it's really exciting to see it in real time. We talked about it for months now. ICP being this, I hate to use the phrase Trojan horse, but just how other chains could eventually one day perhaps rely solely on ICP to leverage decentralization to the fullest extent. And why would they do that? There will be reasons. We perhaps don't know them now. We can suspect of the reasons. We've talked about many of the reasons: the tamper-proof and unstoppable, the unhackable, the DAO owned, controlled, and governed, the real time. All that stuff is just going to be so appealing. And when we get a partnership like that, I look forward to discussing it in further detail out in the future. But to leverage the connections and network of other projects when these collaborations happen, I think is just going to allow ICP to spread like a wildfire, so to speak, as more and more of competitors become partners. I think we're going to have competitors that become partners over time. And today, it wasn't the first one, but it was like one of the first big ones. And there's definitely some reasons behind that.
Yeah, I could lend a perspective there. You said competitors into partners. And one of the things that's difficult for a lot of crypto native people to grasp is the idea that two chains can't be like in competition, right? We're in this sort of, most people, including myself a couple of years ago, were in this paradigm where it's like every foundation, developer, team, whatever, is solving for the same problems. And they're trying to deliver solutions with slight variance in terms of you might have Solana that sacrifices on decentralization to have massive throughput, right? Every chain is competing on those things. And how can we build the fastest, most decentralized, scalable token ledger? And I think that's a valid thing to solve for. I think token ledgers will be very important, right? To have highly secure, immutable ledgers, right? This idea that there's this other network that can support token ledger functionality and things like that, and DeFi and all of these things, but then also does all of this other stuff. And there's essentially no other network that's doing this in a vacuum, at least. ICP is really, it is like the final frontier for all of these things. It brings, if you're building an app, you're going to have all these third-party providers. You're going to have a cloud hosting platform, a data storage layer, a content delivery network, and then you're going to interface with a ledger, right? That's on chain. But with ICP, you can have all of these things. You can develop, and you don't need all of these external third-party service providers to build your app. So the first hurdle, I think, in terms to Chris's point about how do we get retail adoption, I don't know to what extent we really can initially get grandma to care about ICP. Does grandma care about AWS? Probably not. But does grandma use Facebook? Probably. She's probably on some platforms. And I think in terms of ICP adoption, it's definitely possible. It's going to be an uphill battle, but as more institutional partnerships manifest, like what we're seeing with Hedera, the communities supporting those chains are going to realize, wait a second, why would we need two token ledgers? Maybe ICP isn't just a competing token ledger, they're an infrastructure layer, right? And it's going to happen just in degrees. It's going to happen slowly. I think in terms of adoption, Dfinity talks about this. They work in a top-down way where they're going out and they're talking to governments. They're talking to very large institutional players. They're not necessarily going after blue chip companies right away. And that's how I see it playing out. I think it's gonna be a top-down approach where we just see partnerships taking place at the highest levels. And then that's going to trickle down. And along the way, the crypto communities are their eyes will open to the reality of the situation. And at that point, I think it's going to just be a lot of handshakes, right? Across crypto Twitter. HBAR ICP handshake, ICP ETH handshake, ICP every chain handshake. And it's going to take a little while to get there. But once that happens, you're going to see new dApps, new applications. And at that point, you might have grandma coming on and use an open chat or using some application. She doesn't know what it's running on, but she's using it. That's my take on all of that. Swissy, do you have anything to add in there?
In terms of an overview of where we are and where we're headed, I think that was excellent. The only thing I'm looking at is like Hedera market cap right now, 14th. ICP, I think 34th. And I've routinely gone back to the top 100 because on the side, I'm playing around with potentially a Warren Buffett AI tool that goes into repos and checks like if they're valuable commits. And then you could see, okay, this chain has actually done good work. And then maybe having an investment arm or whatever. Maybe someday it'll be on ICP. But again, this is a partnership between the 14th. Like this is top 20 with pretty much two in the top 50 to top 20, whatever. This is a monumental partnership. These partnerships don't happen. It's the first pillar of recognition that ICP is not a competitor, which is now the whole ecosystem sees that. So it's a monumental partnership because it's not only like a benefit to both chains. As we know, you get the smart contracts, the added storage and everything that you have on ICP, and then the token ledger from Hedera, as well as the partnerships where Hedera in terms of tokenization is, I believe, the leader in tokenizing the world. And now what they've said is, okay, we want to tokenize the world and we're going to use ICP smart contracts to do it. It's a phenomenal, it's once you have these kind of building blocks, you realize that all chains are now pretty much dApps. And we've gone back and forth about this as well. But similar to what Zen was saying, Like all these chains are now dApps that can be on ICP. And there's some chains that are maybe really good at certain things. Like one to highlight is the project, the Alexandria, the library, where part of it's on ICP and part of it's on Airweave for the permanent storage. And it would have been better probably from the start if it was this way, but with crypto and money, there's always like people trying to do new things, VCs trying to gain certain funds. And for me, like I've worked with several startups within Web3, and a lot of it, yeah, you go to whoever's offering money. There's not really like a chain loyalty, which is the inverse of what I've seen on ICP, of where people are really in it for the tech. And some of them say, yeah, they could get more support. I feel like that goes for pretty much every chain. But in terms of, again, the capabilities of ICP, it's not in this narrative of everybody against everybody, right? My developers can be your developers. Everyone can work together on this thing of this blockchain singularity, which was one of the first things that I was interested for. But I think it's nice that they transferred away from that, because how are you going to explain blockchain singularity? There's no way. But again, right? Like we had the ETH L2s, and you have more of this parasitic relationship. Like you have more of a siphoning of liquidity rather than a cultivation of liquidity. And that's something I see, and like early signs of it with the Oicy wallet, having Solana in there as well. But you won't go to like your Solana wallet, your Bitcoin wallet, switching between all these things. Like you'll be in the crypto environment. And that's something that I see being built out from ICP. But again, it can't only be ICP, because it's all these other communities, it's all these other cultures, it's all these other coins that bring a lot of value. There's a whole lot of talent out there. And instead of just siphoning and saying, hey, you can only work on this chain or whatever, the future is definitely cross chain, but it's more, how do we leverage the best of every single chain? And for a lot of the infrastructure, the best infrastructure currently is ICP. So then, okay, if that's the case, what about the best ledger, for example? Okay, maybe HBAR, right? And you start to see these ways. Cardano talks about decentralization. Okay, can we potentially get some links of CK ADA or something like that, where you continue to build with the best of each chain, and the entire time you're burning cycles? It's an excellent narrative for ICP, and they've designed it extremely well. And exactly like Zen was saying earlier, this is just the beginning.
That's really interesting. I love the conversation of the tokenization of stocks and bonds. That's one of the key takeaways, I feel like, from the Hedera crowd. And with them leading the off-chain transactions handedly, what is obvious in hindsight is the leader in off-chain transactions leveraging the leader in on-chain compute, which is ICP, to perhaps do that. Really, that is a absolutely massive potential use case. Really could be something massive. So, yeah, tough to see right now, but could be obvious looking back on it.
And I'm just super stoked at like setting the precedent for partnership, setting a precedent for collaboration versus the tribalism that's been so rampant. Like Web3 should be a harmonious, unifying environment, right? And so this partnership is a big step towards that. Super exciting.
Yeah, Mike, did you want to dive into the AI narrative and everything that's happening in the world of AI? For those who don't know, Swissy is the ICP AI wizard in this community, and he spends a lot of time researching, delving into what's happening, all of the different technology and platforms and tools that are launching. So if you want, we could segue into some talk about AI on chain and the future there.
Sounds great. Like off the rip, I kind of see it affecting algorithms in markets and in the world in general. The resolution is just so low still at this point, but through this inference, the way I interpret it is agents and AIs able to make sense of the world and perhaps create investment theses faster, better, more accurately, more reliable than a human alone. I'd like to see large portions of folks in the ICP community leveraging inference in some way to generate low but consistent monthly returns in a way that's controlled by the DAO. The opportunities, the potential campaigns, I think is what they might be called, again, with no CEO, no board of directors, no corporate shareholders, no roof, no rent. So there's going to be an opportunity for this middleman to appear. And whether it's a middleman leveraging your stock investments or your local market for whatever your products or services are, or if you're just a random person looking to capitalize on what's taking place in the world, I kind of see this inference thing being a key part. And now that we're seeing the cost to generate an OpenAI competitor coming down, perhaps the engine behind this type of inference slowly trends down and down, making it more economically possible, leveraging things like canisters with the potential to store this data, have perhaps the smaller language models working together. Really low resolution at this moment, but really interesting nonetheless. What do you think about that, Swissy?
Yeah, I think, well, one, the idea of an SNS run investment handling, I think, is phenomenal, especially the way that the SNS is designed. Basically, you would all pitch in some ICP, and then the AI goes and brings in returns. But once you get into kind of the trading sets that you can get and the data that you can provide it, then you're combining real time, say all of Twitter, say if you're focusing on crypto, you get all the real time data, you know how people react. And then with algorithms and trading things, you can back test, which you go back and you can actually test early on. So you can take your earlier tweets or whatever, compare it to how the market's doing. And then now you basically have a way of producing this data for the LLMs. And again, LLMs are extremely good at predicting next tokens, right? The next word. So once you connect like all the social side of, and it's not an easy thing to do. It's definitely like a whole bunch of data that you need, but you're looking at large firms, say OpenAI or something that's closed source, and they want to keep it to themselves. And now they're even going to become for profit. It's extremely dangerous, I think, the path that we're headed on that side. And then on the other side, you have open source, you have on chain, you have transparency, you have guarantees to run. They can't just shut down your AI. Say you have an AI now that's an agent or whatever, and it's making sure that you get medicine, your health, pretty much everything. It knows more about you than you do. And now you have a for-profit company. Who knows? Are they going to make you sick? Are they going to give you what's not actually best for you, but what's best for them? Are you working for an enterprise and they're going to clone you? So now, because they cloned you while you worked for that enterprise, they actually own that agent. Now they don't need you and they can live off of this digital version of yourself. So all these things, like they're going to be real problems. And I think the best way to solve it is on chain. That's where this magic, unanticipated connection between crypto and I comes from. A lot of people, like in terms of investment, say like AI 16Z and boosting with Solana and everything. I think you get so much more development, and there's so many crack devs that are out there. Excuse me, and then working towards this open source AGI. It's a noble endeavor, and it's something that's becomes extremely valuable and extremely essential for where we're headed. Where if you have an AGI, an intelligence that's for profit for a single company, who do you think it's going to profit from? Probably a bunch of us. Like where's the money going to come from? And then you have certain things like where you could have it be transparent and more on chain. But in terms of currently what I think about like the SNS DAO and ICP and agents doing that kind of trading, I think it's there. I think most of the building blocks of how to achieve that is already here. But then you have the securities. You have the the downside of, okay, like you're the algorithm that's now getting your groceries, Amazon, for whatever reason, doesn't support it anymore. They need more profit. That's more of a drastic case, but it's still a vulnerability, right? A point of failure, which with ICP, right, the big narrative is removing these points of failure. You apply that to AI, and it's insanely valuable. Like you have OpenAI goes down, and you have everybody who doesn't know how to code anymore. Like maybe Stack Overflow gets a redemption, and then people are like, "Oh, wait a minute, this thing was actually like we don't give it as much respect as we should with OpenAI training." Excuse me, a lot of data from them, and then now we have a model, DeepSeek, that was trained on synthetic data. So it wasn't any data that was there. They went from the flow of OpenAI first training on everything, which they're getting in trouble now because there isn't those regulations. We're in an unoptimized internet environment, and it's unoptimized for the purpose of AI. And then as we're transitioning to ICP, this is now an AI optimized environment where the entire thing is you have the safeguards, you have the ownership, you have the guarantees, and you have this all within the smart contract environment. Deterministic. Like it's what they've done is incredible. I don't think they necessarily planned for the AI boom that we've seen. But again, like you have the same tamper-proof environment, but applied to AI becomes insanely valuable. So for context with DeepSeek, you go from all the data on the internet. That's what OpenAI trained their models with. And then you have some system prompts or whatever, and then you get the model. So you can tweak the systems and everything. You can tweak the weights and all of that. But we don't know what OpenAI is using. But we know the data that OpenAI can produce because we're using it. Like every time we have an output, that's data that's produced. Okay, so now at a massive scale, you can produce this synthetic data, right? This generated data. So now you take this generated data that's maybe twice, 3 times, 10 times as big as all the data on the internet or whatever. And then you put it into the model. So that's with DeepSeek. But then with DeepSeek, what you don't know is the system prompts that they've had in between the outputs. So say, what is it, Xi Jinping or whatever, right? Like you can't, the model does not respond to certain things. So there is bias where you've had things that are pretty much not hard coded, but you over and over again with this training data set, you have this callback to the system prompt, which kind of it's chained. Like you have shackles around this model, but you can't see those. They've done a phenomenal job open sourcing, and I think all the weights and people can reproduce it. Meta right now is definitely running around thinking where they went wrong, which is most likely bureaucracy with a bunch of VPs and making sure they go by the book. But with something like DeepSeek, like it opens the door to, so for context, it's a reasoning model that is just as good in certain aspects as OpenAI's closed source, which you're paying ridiculous amounts. So I think it's like a 60x reduction in costs. So now what that means is everybody is using it. Everybody is using it. It's the new shift. It's the new paradigm for all these AI developers around the world. And they've open sourced it. They shared the weights and they shared how to do it. It's an incredible gift to the open source community. And I think now Meta will improve, sure. And it's less about China this or US or all these kind of political things. I really see it more as this shift between closed source and open source AI and what you can see, who's profiting off what, where the transparency is. But again, there's certain things that you don't know. And the reason why you don't know is because it's not on chain. It's not on ICP. You can't find the exact updates that's going on. You can't find the training set. You can't find the data. You can't point to it. It still continues to be a black box. But what ICP gives you, if you inference on chain, excellent. I think end game for ICP is probably the entire cycle of the AI. So you get the training, probably even pre-training, and then I think there's something in between that and inference. All of that on chain means that if there's anything that goes wrong, you can pinpoint back to what happened, or you can follow along. So the transparency is there. Transparency, security, these benefits for AI are not, it's not like a tool. It's not like, oh, like you can use this if you want to. Eventually it becomes you can only use it in this environment. Like not necessarily, they're not necessarily rogue AI, but like even locally, like you run your local model, you try to do certain things. It's very difficult to then start having trillions of dollars transacted on something that can go down. Like you have a point of failure, but you go into this chain that's never gone down within a smart contract. So it's deterministic and guaranteed to run. Yeah, there's a lot of value there.
One of the things that comes up in my mind when I hear that is, imagine if you were Netflix and you designed your website on AWS, and then AWS in the background is like, we could probably do that same thing, and then generate, now you have Amazon Video. Like, in some regards, you're going to want the privacy behind some of these more valuable data sets. So that way your data host doesn't become your first and most detrimental competitor.
Yeah, I think that's an interesting point, Mike. I wanted to continue on with and get into agents a little bit, if that's okay. I love talking to Swissy about all things to do with AI. The craze right now is all about agents, but unlike NFTs, tokenization is a groundbreaking concept, right? Tokenization, everything will become tokenized, everything. But, in 2021, we saw the NFT hype cycle and then it died. And in this current cycle, we're seeing AI agents take off in a similar capacity. It's something you can invest in. There's a meme aspect to it, and the trenches are hyped, right? We'll put it that way. But I think that the gap between sort of NFTs taking off and now tokenizing the world, I think there's going to be a much smaller gap of time between sort of these first agent iterations that people are getting excited about and investing in, and really impactful innovation in the realm of agents. I think it's just going to exponentially explode in the Web 2 space. Companies are going to be developing agent products, agentic infrastructure, agentic systems. And I think that it's going to, Web3 developers are going to be looking to integrate these things or build these things and have them tie into some capacity with their blockchains or whatever. And so ICP, we've talked a lot about agents on ICP, but there's so many benefits to putting an agent on chain, having the data on chain, and having a tamper-proof environment for an agent to live in. It's a frontier technology. It's a frontier paradigm that's just going to change absolutely everything. And my opinion on what's important when thinking about agents is cybersecurity, number one, probably first and foremost. And there's probably also an aspect of governance as well with this stuff that eventually will happen. But security in particular, I think, is the number one area that governments, regulators, developers, institutional players are going to be thinking about with agent development. And I can't see an alternative paradigm to putting as much of the tech stack on chain, right? And ICP seems like the ideal fit for a lot of this stuff. Swissy, I don't know if you have any thoughts on that, but yeah.
Yeah, I think in terms of agents on chain, there's currently a lot of things in the space that are said to be on chain. There's certain chains, we won't name them, that repeatedly say things are on chain. But then in terms of having an LLM or having inference be on chain, absolutely not, unless it's on ICP. So that's where we're currently at, that we do have the inference that's on chain. Is it slow? Is it more costly? Yes. Is it tamper-proof, unstoppable, and guaranteed to run? Yes. Eventually, will the cost go down and the speed go up? Yes. Will the unstoppable and transparent whatever go away? No. So we'll eventually have everything. So you'll be in an environment that is basically on par with maybe where we're at today in Web 2. Because Web 2 continue to advance, LLMs will get better, costs will go down, And now you have the advantages of a secure environment. But specifically on agents, in terms of DeFi NFT craze, probably 99% of NFTs are down or valueless now. 99% of agents will dissipate. Same thing. I think in terms of frameworks that people are building on, I think there's griffane.com or griffain.com. Phenomenal in terms of end user products for, I want to trade this when it hits this price that we've seen Dom say a few times. They've built that out. You have AI16Z, and AI16Z is much more of this push towards open source AGI. And if you have open source AGI running an unstoppable and living within a canister, that's where you unlock this ability to have essentially AI that's living completely sovereign. It's not tied to somebody's local machine that they can just turn off whenever they want. It's not tied to AWS. It's not tied to these centralized servers. It's in a decentralized environment. I guess the NNS and everything can put an end to it. So there are still the safety measures, which are definitely needed where we're headed. But you have this essentially this AI, this agent that's guaranteed to run. So you have this agent that now is heavily incorporated into your own life. With AI16Z, you can add these plugins. You can add these functionality to these agents that then go out and do more things. So they have personalities, you have connections, you start to collaborate with them, and now they can do things as well. So let's say you want to order a pizza. Right now, you got to think of places near you. Maybe you go to a website, maybe Google Maps or something, and you click on what's near you, and then you got to call, and then you got to check their menu. There's all these steps that you do as a user when you already knew you wanted pizza. You probably already knew what flavor you wanted. And in this case now, with the AI, with this plugin with AI16Z, you can order Domino's. And eventually, probably you can order more pizzas. But just in terms of an example, now you have an agent that knows exactly what flavor you want, knows exactly the nearest Domino's pizza to you or whatever. And now it's like, hey, I'm pretty, like, maybe even in this space, you like quickly send a text or message or whatever. And you say like, hey, I'm pretty hungry. I'm thinking pizza. And it's like, oh, done. That's it. It's not, oh, let me leave this, go to this website, go to all these things. And this is a small thing, but think about flights, airlines, everything. And essentially what you do is that's a lot of data about you. There's a lot of data that you're sending these agents that if it's not in a secure environment, people can exploit. Same thing we've seen with Web 2 environments. We know they exploit, but we don't necessarily look behind the curtain, because we don't really have other options. But Web 3, the ethos of Web 3 was supposed to get into this decentralization. And that's super important for these agents. So now let's say the data and all of this, you don't really know where it's going. And this agent is being hosted by AWS. AWS now controls pretty much your life. When you get your pizza, if you get your pizza. But again, that's just pizza. What about a big flight home to see family? All these kind of guarantees that you want. And now you put it within the ICP environment that's in a smart contract that's guaranteed to run. You start to have these advantages that become incredibly important. And there's people working on it, people from AI16Z. So again, AI16Z founder and a lot of core contributors, what were they doing 4 or 5 years before AI16Z? They were building on canisters on ICP. Mm-hmm. That's what they were doing. They were in there for the tech, and now it's come full circle. And a few of them are building back. So that's, I think, Dreaming Lucid. So Dreaming Lucid, I think 22 on X. And then you have Dan McCoy. Absolutely brilliant individuals, brilliant people that are pushing for this decentralized data, this decentralized environment for AI living on chain. And the living part is important. It's not living with like dependency on a human. It's not living with dependency on closed source, like centralized systems. No. It's living in a decentralized world, fully sovereign. And that's, I think, potentially it'll be Beth AI. I don't want to speculate or anything, but Dreaming Lucid already produced one of these agents early on. So that might be the first one that we see living on chain through AI16Z. And that's just that first step. And then you can build on top of it, build all these plugins, build all these connections within this deterministic, guaranteed to run smart contract environment.
Swissy, so let's talk about enterprise adoption. When I came into ICP, right, because I was in Cardano, I was focused on retail adoption because in crypto, you might get the odd, they had an event down in South America or Africa. Those sort of mid-sized crypto communities, it's all about how do we get other crypto guys involved in what we're doing. I think ICP, it's this world computer. It's anybody can build on it. Anybody can use it. Tools like Caffeine will enable that. But back to the adoption discussion, I really think that to shift people to this new paradigm, it's going to happen top down, and it probably needs to happen top down, right? The leap in sort of understanding is so great that developers aren't going to just want to change paradigms on a dime. They've spent their careers learning how to develop on Web 2 and using Web 2 technologies and mastering that craft. And the prospect of suddenly shifting, unless it is really clear and made clear by the institutions saying this is what we need to do, I don't know how quick that would happen. But so with AI and agents and all of this stuff, again, I just look at it from a cybersecurity perspective. I think that's the simplest way to understand why ICP is inevitable. It's all about cybersecurity, tamper-proof, things like this. And so, Swissy, any thoughts on what we're going to see on the enterprise level with agents and just maybe some of the friction points for how some of these groups are thinking about security in the Web 2 space? They're probably not thinking about ICP right now, but if there's those friction points, people are talking about how do we govern artificial superintelligence, right? If your system is leaky whatsoever, God forbid you have a malicious superintelligent program or agent, whatever it is, and it can escape, right? It can escape its box. And so I think about that situation and I just go, man, you could really dial in security on ICP using canisters and whatnot. Do you have any thoughts on that, Swissy? And last thing I'll just say is I think the security discussion is going to be the thing that gets a lot of these institutions, enterprises to look at a platform like ICP. Potentially Utopia, I don't know yet. They might go to Utopia. But just in general, what ICP is offering, the tech stack it offers. Do you have any thoughts on that, Swissy?
While you were explaining, I was thinking of, are there any parallels we can make? I think a big one is just cloud in general and how it parallels AI, where right now, if you're a certain company, if you're a tech company, can you run your own like cloud and host your own things? Sure. Yeah, you probably have all these data centers anyway, and that's what brought out cloud in the beginning, like AWS, Google. I think even LinkedIn probably runs its own stuff. So if you have this capability, then you're probably not going to change much. The difference comes for those companies that don't. Let's say BMW, for example. BMW does not have the tech infrastructure that AWS has, right? Probably not even close. Does it need to? No, not really. But what does it do? It partners with these cloud providers, and then now it does have that service, right? But it's tied to it. It helps the data collection and everything for these centralized servers. So I think in terms of where we are with AI, now that's the same thing, but with, say, OpenAI, like running massively, or you have this massive scale of inference, or not everybody has a farm of like H100s or like all these GPUs or whatever, or even Cerebrus, which is exciting stuff that they're doing. But you don't have these things. So what you do is you partner with them, and you're kind of shackled to the centralized entities. Same thing. So again, same thing we saw with cloud now comes for AI, of who has these opportunities. Yeah, you have, I think, some decentralized cloud opportunities for GPU. Forget exactly what it is, but in terms of, again, going from these companies that don't necessarily have the compute power, what are they going to do? They're going to unload their a lot of proprietary data to these centralized entities. Like, I think OpenAI even has this business tier or connections and whatever, and you can, yeah, you can get the leading models, but at what cost? And at what cost to the customers? And is your data actually private? And a lot of things that aren't necessarily guaranteed. So I think in terms of the enterprise adoption and where we're headed, is as we get closer and closer to that cost and speed threshold where it's, you know what, this isn't actually that much of a reduction. I don't need this speed to be insane. I need my proprietary data to be safe. And I need to do some AI on it because I want to be advanced. You know, I want to be competing. I want to do some searches on my data or whatever, and then provide it to people where the entire stack of that end to end is tamper proof. Like we saw the AWS leak and all of these things. So we know there's vulnerabilities. Vulnerabilities have existed for a while. Dom always says like it's 10 trillion market for cybersecurity. Now with AI and AI cybersecurity and AI running things in the world, that cost is going to go way up. Because now exactly what we were talking about earlier with the agents, right? Now you have agents that are running around doing everything for people. And you have that in an environment that's not secure. It's a recipe for a disaster. But again, right now, a lot of people, like you said, Zen, like, how do you find ICP? How do you find these things? How do you, if you're an enterprise in certain things, a lot of that is definitely through Dfinity, which I think they've done a massive job on the enterprise side. And that's where it's hard because ICP comes maybe to a crypto event and it doesn't fit in. It doesn't fit in for the most part. ICP goes to a Web2 event and it doesn't fit in. You know, like it's an outlier. I think exactly back to Mike's point of finding these outliers. It doesn't necessarily tie in to Web2 and doesn't necessarily tie into Web3, but it brings them both together in a way that improves both of them. And again, it doesn't matter what chain you're on or whatever, but tying it back more specifically to the enterprise, I think that's what you double down on is this secure environment where, hey, are you an enterprise? Do you want your data to be private with no central authorities or organizations overlooking into your data and forcing you into these partnerships that you don't really want to be a part of? And then once you're there, you can't get out. If that's not you, but you have this proprietary data and you want AI capabilities and you want to make sure that it's even more safe and secure than current Web2 paradigms, ICP.
Yeah, and like you said, private. I think what we see in the space is words get thrown around, and ecosystems. I don't want to say twist narratives, but they just have their own perspective on what they think they're doing. And when you look into it, maybe it's not all the way there, at least as we would understand it, end to end on chain, for instance. But you said private, and I'm thinking, I think so many ecosystems, even Web2 providers are going to use that word, right? They're going to offer services private. And it's like on ICP, well, what distinguishes it? And I think there's probably something verifiably private, where we're going to see new terms getting created to describe really what separates when we say private, what we're actually saying, versus when you say private, what you're saying. And I think, yeah, a lot of work needs to be done to really distinguish in terms of how we label things and how we communicate. And I've no doubt that Dfinity is doing this. And I imagine terms already exist to explain these things. But yeah.
Yeah. And it's also important because the industry throws down a lot of things, right? Like, oh, private this, private that. And then people are like, wait a minute, what do you mean you're putting everything on chain? Like, why would I want my proprietary data on chain? That sounds like a terrible idea. And the reason why that's able to work is because you can, again, this is why ICP doesn't necessarily fit in, but it does offer more things for other chains, is you have the ability to have data that's either public or private. So you have, and the private part is encrypted, but again, there's authorized individuals that have access to those certain canisters, smart contracts, data, whatever, right? Like you have to have the authority to access it. It's there, but it's encrypted. Rather than this base layer of everything being there, you have this kind of only authorized personnel only aspect to this, where it's still encrypted, still tamper-proof, private, but your data is accessible to those individuals, which is a very kind of minute point, but it opens a lot of possibilities where it's not open to everybody, but you can really pinpoint who has access.
Yeah, I think that's really valuable. The ownership, the ability to edit and audit in real time without fear of messing some stuff up after the fact. I just think the auditability, the scalability, the security is just going to be waving folks in out of Web 2 who've had enough, perhaps like Hedera. We don't know, all we can speculate about their reasoning, but there is some reasoning behind their partnership with ICP, and I think it's going to wind up being one of the biggest partnerships in the Web3 space.
Swissy, I have a question about agents. I was wondering if you could give us a temperature check on the utility of agents, like at this very moment. Because for me, obviously they're hyped up. It's all the rage. Everybody's talking about them. My massage therapist added me into his crypto group chat, and it's like a bunch of dudes like aping into Solana agents being deployed on Solana, however that works. And like, so I'm just curious, like, how are you using them? Are you using them? And then what does the gap look like towards what they will be used for in the future?
First of all, phenomenal question. So where we're at right now with these agents that are built on Solana, again, the token is on Solana, but the tech is built off of it. That needs to be like a clear distinction. Are they building within the environment, social environment, Solana? Sure. Do they have integrations where you can transact and these agents can actually control wallets on Solana? Yes. Can they also do that with all these other chains? Yes. So it's not necessarily tied to any single chain. That's more so pinpointing the ELIZA OS, like the framework for these agents, where everyone's searching for these integrations. But where we're at today is still those early days of transactions going through, tying to Twitter. You have these agents that are pretty much yapping and talking and posting certain things. But you also have grounds for these agents that are like trained on mimetic theory and how ideas transpire, how things mutate and grow, which is incredibly valuable. Can you infuse an agent to be trained on exactly how to create FOMO? I'm sure you can, and I'm sure people do that. But what ELIZA OS has done extremely well is create this framework in this environment for people to contribute, where you really align against this movement between closed source and open source. So again, completely open source, anybody can contribute, and it grows and it scales. I think there's more people working on that than, say, even Definity and things like that. So there's a lot of movement in this, and AI repos and whatever in Web 2 get thousands and thousands of contributors. But again, to go back to the temperature check and the original question, where we're at is the removal of the UX hurdle for crypto. I think is probably where we're at right now, what has been effectively enabled immediately from this technology is you don't have to know how to use DEX. You don't have to know what address you're sending to. You don't have to do all these manual things that we've done because we've been in here for years, and like double, triple check the address and hopefully pray we don't click on a link that takes us and now our wallets get drained. Even like a lot of UX in general isn't the best in Web3, not to throw any shade, but because it's definitely like a tech heavy environment. And I think a nice kind of product flow is needed. Phantom's doing a great job. Again, that Griffane.com is doing a good job. But yeah, removing this complexity that we've all now become numb to. Like we just know we know to look at, I don't know, the end of an address or to send a little bit in the beginning. If it's too good to be true, it usually is. Either we've learned from experience or we've been vigilant and hopefully we're able to avoid it. But yeah, there's a lot of value that's lost, scaled up to so many people. And then now what you have with these agents is, hey, like what are the top, I don't know, meme coins or whatever on Solana that I should be in? And it's like, okay, go for it. And then it does it for you. Like you don't have to interact with these things. You don't have to do all these different steps that you have to go through. So I think in terms of where we are, I think that's an excellent one. And then the other side of that is the character sets and kind of these personalities that these agents have, where effectively you have this kind of boilerplate to whatever agent you want. And it's similar a little bit to LangChain, I would say, but again, a heavier focus on crypto and more abilities through crypto. So again, if we go through this world that becomes completely tokenized, it's going to be frameworks like AI16Z, ElizaOS, and that side of things that are going to be transferring these funds, that are going to be like, if everything is tokenized, these agents are going to be the ones that deal with it. But in terms of, again, back to the temperature check, where we're at, it's removing this complexity that crypto has had since its inception. And it's now, you can just maneuver crypto to the ability that you can either talk, chat, or whatever with these agents.
Amazing. Thank you. But so currently there aren't any agents that exist that you can tell to grab the hottest meme coins off of Solana. Like
There is.
They are.
There are. So so they are. I think to the best of my knowledge, Griffane, so it's Griffin, but then with AI at the end instead of just IN. They're doing a great job. But yes, so it's more like, the reason why Solana is excellent for this is not necessarily because the chain is where the capabilities lie. It's because the speed of, I guess, monetary acceptance or monetary, don't even know what the best way to say it is. But basically, as soon as you want to test an idea, you can get a valuation of it, which is ridiculously fast. Essentially, like with what we've seen with these agents, is pretty much if you have an idea and you're like, I don't know, people like will go even to your repo and they'll search these devs, and you have a proven ability to build, then your valuation goes up. So it's insane speed to go from social to capital. And it's, you with these agents, yes, they're building on top of Solana, but there's a reason. There's a lot of liquidity and there's a lot of people that spend a whole bunch of time there. And again, there is a reason why the people originally from AI16Z had to leave ICP, right? And now there's integrations and now there's stuff coming back to ICP. But again, that original bootstrap, that original escape velocity for these projects is happening on Solana because the speed is there. The, I guess, onboarding, like the speed to get involved in a certain ecosystem is extremely reduced. I think for tech wise, is internet identity a much better and safer framework for all of Web3? Absolutely. But it's a new thing. I've used different wallets on Cardano, and I've done MetaMask and everything for a lot of years, and even Phantom. And then you get into this internet identity, and you're lost. You're lost a little bit. You don't really understand. You got your account ID, principal ID. Then you realize, oh, wait a minute, like this already has session keys. So if my wallet on this app if this app goes down or it gets compromised, my wallet is actually safe because it was never actually always like completely hosted on this app. That's a phenomenal value add. We see chains like, I think, Abstract now that's coming out that is showcasing that as well. And that improves the UX. Phenomenal. But again, that quick, the speed of like somebody posts something on Twitter, for example, or on X, and you immediately, like, you can follow debates or whatever, you go to pump.fun, refresh, and you have exactly whatever that quote someone was saying in say a speech at the speed of the speech is given, sometimes even faster, because people are trying to game that with pump.fun or like, I don't know, like hype arbitrage or whatever, where you try to get in quicker. But Solana is an excellent place for this liquidity to be very quickly distributed. So there are projects that allow you to like ape into most relevant meme coins. You can even specify it further. But yeah, again, like the coins are mostly there, but most of the development is off chain.
Amazing. Thank you.
Yeah.
I guess how soon will we see an equivalent of something like that on ICP?
That's a good question. I think it was like 1 or 2 weeks until we get the ElizaOS on ICP. So again, massive shout outs to Lucid and Dan McCoy, and then also Jordan and the Demergent team with Azel, which allows you to build in TypeScript. And I think they also have Kybra, I think, which does Python. So you have the most popular languages that you could for developers. Now you have the ability to do that on ICP. So I believe they're using the Azel framework. So again, Eliza OS is built in TypeScript. And then to get TypeScript on ICP, you can do that with Azel. So I'd say it's safe to assume that they're using it and they're working together on that. So the tech of the framework, I think, will be on living within ICP within either a week or next few weeks, because it is still a massive overhaul. But in terms of having agents that then trade for you and do all these things, I think we're very close. I think there's Alice recently, but again, closed source, so we don't really know what's going on. But Alice is one that says, hey, like now, I think there was recently a governance proposal that was passed that gave it 1,000 ICP in its trading wallet. So now we'll see where that goes and how that works. The trading tech is there. You have just endpoints in terms of either Kong swap or ICP swap or things like that. So I would say, like, very quickly and shortly, like maybe 1-2 weeks, we'll see these things start to appear. And then once you have the Eliza framework on here, a lot of people can start playing around and building with that. They don't have to, like, it's not, rather than getting just the endpoints of a chain where it's basically all you can do on other chains is the ledger interactions, right? Where you can like just transfer tokens, which is great. And it's a massive value add. But then on ICP, you have this environment where front end, back end, everything lives on chain. You want an agent to build a website, build an app, go for it. You want an agent to build on caffeine when caffeine comes out. Sure, go ahead. Yeah, the capabilities are much more extensive on ICP, but there's that technical burden that you do have to overcome. But I don't know. I'm not, if I was behind the scenes and seeing exactly what the progress was on certain things of these agents, then I'd definitely have a better estimate. But just on what I've seen, the development, who's behind it, yeah, I'd say even 1 to 2 weeks. And then after that, it opens the floodgates.
Wow, incredible. Thanks for that.
Swissy, that was exceptional. The breakdown was fantastic. This type of material, I think, is exactly what the community is looking for. Chris, anything?
First, I guess I'll start with, as an aspiring prompt dev, what advice do you have for like getting my footing? Yeah, just curious what recommendations you may have for a normie who's trying to leverage prompt development potential.
I'm as much of a layman with learning this stuff as you, Chris. I'm just experimenting. I'm just getting my hands into these tools, playing around with it. And I'm sure just every single tool has prompt guides and stuff, but there's really smart people on Twitter, on YouTube who do courses on effective prompting. And the knowledge base is just going to expand and get really, what's the word, minuscule, right? You're going to be able to have, but it's just with anything. Like I self-taught coding and software, and I think prompting it's so much more accessible, I think, like learning how to prompt effectively than it is to learn how to code effectively. So yeah, but Swissy is the guy absolutely to talk about all of this.
Yeah, I think so. Adding on to that, my background is in philosophy. So in terms of questioning things and all this stuff and prompting, I probably spend way too much time prompting. There's certain things within computer science that are extremely helpful. The first one is the famous example of asking a computer to make a peanut butter jelly sandwich. And you're like, okay, make a peanut butter jelly sandwich. Okay, so reach for the peanut butter. And it's like, all right, what is peanut butter? What is reach? How do I reach? Okay, now take the knife. What is a knife? There's a lot of assumptions that we make when we try to manipulate AI in certain ways that when it doesn't work out, we're like, oh, this thing sucks. So it didn't figure it out. Like it didn't build me like the best website, best landing page. Like this marketing copy is terrible. A lot of that mostly comes down to the prompts. So again, I would say make sure that the prompts are in a way that the AI understands, because the AI is the builder. It's not a human. How do you understand what an AI is thinking? I think for a lot of people, that was behind the scenes. No one really knew. You had to be an AI engineer. You had to be somebody who like works with these things, maybe sees the entire life cycle of an AI. But now with the open source model of DeepSeek, which has this reasoning aspect to it, and it shows you its reasoning. So you can see this output, and it's pretty long, it's pretty extensive, but you can see how it's thinking or how it's reasoning. You can see like certain aspects, and sometimes it even roasts your prompt. Not really. It'll say, oh, like I don't really understand this part or whatever, and then it tries to come back to the reasoning. But you can start to play around with it because it's open source, and you can even have it locally free, whatever, and have it be so you see how your prompts are interpreted by the AI, because that's the most important part. Because if you have this idea of exactly how the LLM is processing your inputs, then your inputs get better. The second part I would say is using tools. I think bolt.new has it. I'm not sure if other people have it or if they run it behind the scenes, but you'll enter your prompt. Say you want to build a landing page for a SaaS and you want it to be about memes or, I don't know, hosting front ends on ICP so that your front end is safe for any jurisdiction. And then you can put it within bolt.new and you ask your prompt, and then there's an enhance prompt button, which takes in that process and enhance your prompt for the AI to make it better. And it goes into, I don't know, Tailwind, ShadCN, maybe you're using frameworks for it, like a nice big bold like a text, like it goes more into specifics, right? You can even get like Flexbox, whatever it outputs, which is much more detailed, right? Rather than, hey, make me a landing page. Okay, what landing page do you want? What colors? Is there a hex code that you can give the AI that has it in the ballpark? And so what I would do is, play around with that and output the prompt. So the way it would work is you prompt it, click the enhance prompt, and now you have a prompt. And I would copy that, paste it in like notes or something. And eventually, if caffeine comes out, then you can put that prompt into caffeine. And now you have an enhanced prompt that's probably better. You'll get better results. But in terms of, how to prompt, I think those are the three building blocks. If you can understand that like you have to be precise, and if you're not, then you allow the LLM to interpret however it will and whatever previous training it has, which sometimes is nice. Sometimes you have no idea what you really want and you can experiment with it. And then, the second part would be experimenting with DeepSeek and seeing how the AI reasons. And then the third part is using tools like bolt.new that enhance your prompt and seeing how it's enhanced. Because a lot of times you don't really know. If you haven't seen how it reasons and how it enhances the prompts, you're kind of in the dark. You kind of endless trial and error. But there are tools like that. I think the last part I would say is Claude. So Claude, they're from Anthropic, which they've partnered with Amazon, I believe. They're phenomenal. Like what they released their documents on, they even did an agent one. But the framework and how to understand about these things, they have quality documentation on that. Man, there's also Perplexity that I heavily use, like in terms of searching the internet, or if you have questions or ideas, even about Motoko. Like I had built a Bob bot that was mining at like a I guess improved capacity all through Perplexity and then Cursor behind the scenes. But just quickly in terms of prompting, sometimes resources are harder to find. So Perplexity is a great way to find those sources and synthesize that data. But that's, I guess, the best arsenal to have on your back when you're attacking prompting.
Phenomenal. Really appreciate that.
Hey, Chris, could I just ask one more question in that vein? Swissy, like how important is and how effective is adding context to your prompts? So like in GPT or something, like let's say I want to write a children's book and I attach, I don't know, the PDF, or I attach the transcript of 50 children's books, right? Or something like that. I would imagine that adding context can be really helpful.
Definitely. I think so I guess for context on context, like a lot of what the LLM does at time of inference is going to pull from its training set and what you've trained it with, but it doesn't have the context that you're specifically looking for, or the edge that you have, right? Where you know exactly, like you've done the research, these children books that you really like. These are the ones that you value. And is it within the training set of these models originally, somewhere in there? Sure. But if you were taking a test, and we've all taken tests before, it's probably the difference between an open book test and then, I guess, closed book, right? Mm-hmm. So whatever you've retained and whatever going into, that's all you got. but now you have this open book that you can immediately find the exact answer. Incredibly important. It's like the added step of you don't necessarily need to fine tune, because you can fine tune models and put it back into the training set, and then it gets better at a certain thing. But if you already have the answers or the context, you have the way that you already want it to be output. Same thing with like taking a screenshot of a front end and say, hey, I want to build this landing page. That's already so much context that it didn't have before. So yeah, incredibly important. Yeah, that's a great point, Zen.
Very cool.
I'm also curious what you guys are working on, if you care to speak on it, like within the IC umbrella.
Yeah, sure. Swissy and I are definitely actually working together on a couple of ideas. I Before I met Swissy, I should say I came into the IC as a product person. I've done front end development. I've done some back end development. I've done some blockchain development. So I've definitely written code. But when I saw what AI was doing, I said, you know what, I want to completely step away and write as little code as possible. I'd rather move into the product space, because coming into the IC and having been a little bit spoiled in some senses by other ecosystems, like the level of product that had been developed in these other ecosystems, it was just clear that for whatever reason, I think ICP is an engineering heavy blockchain, and engineers are just, they're very smart, they're very capable people in their domains, but when it comes to product communication, marketing, it's really difficult for someone operating at a high level to sometimes bridge the gap and think in more abstract terms, or think like maybe a product person would think. And so I said, man, there's a need for product people in this ecosystem to collaborate with these really talented engineers. And yeah, I met with a lot of devs and projects, and just, it was really fun to talk with those guys, see where they were struggling, get a sense for, you know, what the challenges were. And after, you know, hosting a bunch of spaces and just being in the community, I met Swissy. And, you know, Swissy is also in his own right a product person, and he's also he's a technical guy as well. He writes code, does all of this stuff, and he's very much into AI. And so we thought we should really work to set something up where we can collaborate with developers and projects that could use a bit of input from product people, marketing people. My whole term is productization. I was pushing this early on, maybe in late 2024. I was talking a lot about productization, and it's really difficult. Like, it was clear that people weren't understanding it. And in many cases, people they can't see it. They cannot see the need, and I think that's my fault. I've never had to explain, or I've never tried to explain these things for designers, artists, I don't know, whatever it is, left brain, right brain people. It's, in many cases, it's very instinctive. It's very, like, you can look at something and just tell. I struggle to understand the protocol of ICP. I have to really work at it. But with product, with messaging, with marketing, with branding, with the presentation of something, so much of it is just, I just get immediate instinctual feedback, and I can just tell you, like, this is good, this is bad. We need to work on this, we need to work on that. And so what Swissy and I are working on is really building a robust sort of process and framework for productization. And we're going to be leveraging AI and potentially building out some agent stuff with that. But at the very low level, we're going to be just refining our own process, the way, and improving our ability to maybe communicate some of these things to people and projects, and then walk them through a process, a framework, and help them think strategically in these different areas. And ideally, if we could improve the branding, or, hey, the marketing is a little bit lackluster, the website is maybe not as fine-tuned as it could be, it doesn't look great, that's where we could step in and provide that assistance so they can get back to engineering, right? And then there's also just the spaces. I really would like to get more builders, more projects, host some spaces with the Hedera guys, and just keep running that and setting aside time and setting up systems so anybody can reach out. And we have a really efficient way of scheduling things and just managing that work. So, yeah.
You've been killing it, by the way. I wanted to tell you in person.
Thank
the
you.
Spaces. Yeah, man.
100%. Couldn't agree more.
And yeah, there's boundless need for the productization stuff, obviously. So you're going to be put to work, I think, once people recognize that,
Yeah, sorry to cut you off, but I just wanted to, before I forget, it was really interesting when Pierre came on the space the other night. I asked him a question. I said, what are the biggest struggles? What are the biggest challenges that Dfinity is facing behind the scenes? And he didn't use the term productization, but his answer to that question, it essentially came down to productization, right? Because content strategy, information architecture, that falls under the productization umbrella. And that's one of the most foundational things that when I work with startups that we iron out. Everything, like in the beginning of the process, everything is pen and paper, right? It's black and white. It's all we have to nail in content. And there's a lot of ways you think strategically about how to develop the right kind of content. We take into account a lot of information. But yeah, it was just interesting. And to hear that that is definitely a challenge. And because boy, did I get some pushback. And I think that's totally fine. It's difficult to explain, and technical people don't think in these terms. But that was definitely fascinating. And he also was talking about how they're going to be segmenting their AI work into different content domains. So they're going to have internetcomputer.org. They're going to have ICP.ai. That's a very sort of concrete example of what productization strategy looks like. Is if we're doing a lot of things, how do we make it clear and how do we reach the right people as fast as possible and then present that information in a way they can understand? So that was good, man. I think their head is in the right spot, but it's a huge need. It's a huge need, and I'm incredibly excited, especially now working in collaboration with Swissy, to find projects, find needs, find people who could benefit from this kind of input, and just see what we can create. Because there's no reason for us, the ICP ecosystem, to have all this amazing tech, but just have some sort of gaps in the product space, right? Or maybe just products that are again, amazing tech, but just lack a little bit of polishing here and there. Once we get more guys working in that capacity, it's just going to bring all of it full circle. You're going to have the tech, you're going to have the product, you're going to have the marketing, the branding. And at that point, everything's full circle. We're running on, all cylinders at that point.
Let's go.
I think that sounds amazing. I think you're right on track. I've heard you mention, like, why does Dfinity have this type of verbiage on the website versus this type of intro? Or to make it easier, you could just say this instead. A lot of small adjustments. I think there's a sea of those that could be addressed. So I'm excited to see what you guys turn that into. I think there's a lot of upside there.
And people do push back. So I commend you for sharing your opinion regardless, because it needs to be shared.
It's great to push back, and it's totally fine. It was a great learning opportunity for me on a number of things. Just if you're going to talk about this, it taught me a lot about how to communicate certain ideas and just change the approach. So it was, whatever pushback there was, it was healthy on all sides.
To jump on that with Zen, which is probably why immediately, as soon as we reached out to each other or whatever, hit it off. So I have more extensive background with startups, pitch decks, 0 to 1, product market fit, kind of this side of product where, I guess synchronicity from Carl Jung and whatnot. It was pretty crazy. A lot of the similarities and just the, not necessarily the ability, but just, I guess, the the time and the diligence that we've both taken within product to see and share similar ideas, but also push back and contradict and go back and forth. But yeah, in terms of the importance of this productization, this framework, when we have these, especially coming around, everyone's a coder, you can build end-to-end applications, but who's going to use them? What is going to be your differentiator? What is going to be the thing that sets you apart? Why is your project going to get more adoption? Which I think is also a critique and something that Zen and I looked in on for Dfinity and ICP, and how can we improve it? Why don't our parents or friends, family, whatever, why don't they know about ICP? This is incredible technology that is essential for pretty much the livelihood of the masses in this framework, but why don't we know about it? What is this separation? And a lot of that is product. It's beyond metrics, because a lot of people tend to say, okay, like we need to have these metrics, and then you see a spike and it's like, oh, great, we're going this. And then all of a sudden there's a downturn and you don't like the metrics went down. Why? I feel like if you keep asking those questions, you get more and more to the, I guess, that source of how these products spread. That ties a bit more into mimetic theory, but same thing, right? Exactly as Zen was saying, the information architecture. Is there a place for non-crypto natives to understand ICP? Right now, not really, but that's an insane endeavor, and something that I'm excited with Zen, that we can push that boundary of saying, you know what, like we have this amazing tech. Can we bring productization down to a science? Can we have this product side, this product arm that's on par with the technology of this insane blockchain? It's not an easy endeavor by any means, but I think having conversations like this and having the space for it and collaborating with people is how we get there. Because at the end of the day, again, with the ethos of ICP, blockchain singularity, decentralization, secure, guaranteed, tamper proof, like all of these things should be available to everybody. In terms of Zen and I and really delivering these products and I guess this productization arm that any project within ICP, any project outside as well, like anybody can leverage, even Dfinity, essentially bringing these things down to a science that's understandable, that people can incorporate. Essentially, like if our only jobs is helping everybody in the space improve on product or kind of lean on our expertise or things like that, and have that conversation and have this framework that then they can do it on their own. I think it's worth it. I think it's incredibly valuable, and they have then the opportunity to build on it. In an ideal world, it's not like a marketing spend and you spend it once and then you get your marketing done out of the way. It's more of this mindset, this framework that you can apply to every single point of your product, your employees, what their mindset is, how they share certain things. Because if you don't, then you have inefficiencies in your product line, where certain things, and then you ask like, oh, why isn't this adopted? You'll know why, and you'll be able to improve those. Again, like transparency, the whole black box of AI, this ties into that narrative, right? Like giving people the tools to improve their things. Zen's worked with different clients. I've worked with different startups. Like we have the experience of saying like, oh, wait a minute, like there's this gap between this amazing technology and these amazing dApps, these amazing applications, but the reach isn't there, and kind of that whole I guess question of why and how do we improve it. I think it's something that again, like it's definitely not 100% complete, and we'll definitely kind of hash it out, go back and forth. But yeah, like offering those things to ICP community, we all rise with the tide in that aspect. I did definitely want to give a shout out to Party Hats, and it's Crypto Theo. Yeah, he actually opened my eyes a lot to ICP, and we had a lot of debates going back and forth. And I was naive, and I saw a different picture, and was humble enough to learn more, and dive into the technical aspects. But yeah, so Party Hats is more of this idea of how can we leverage ICP technology to change an industry. It's an aspiration of a corrupt system with casinos, where there's always a house and the house always wins. That's tried and tested, always been the case. And then you have this idea of potentially a decentralized casino. And that with party hats, it's pretty hard to do because you have to relinquish a lot of profits because you're not like the house that's going to just reap in the rewards, right? You have to spread the rewards. So how do you do that in a good way that doesn't depend on you holding all the money and then giving it to people, or holding all the coins and then giving it to people, right? That's a point of failure. So again, with ICP, you can have everything that you do within the games, the party mines, and whatever will come later. That is actually on-chain activity on ICP. So you place your bet, and your bet is burned. It's burned from the supply immediately. It doesn't go to us. It doesn't go to anybody. It goes directly to the Canister smart contract. And then say you lose, then okay, now that supply is burned forever. All right. And then say you win, there's new supply minted. Again, immediately from the contract. There's no third party. There's no people that are doing it. It's all automated, and it's all within that contract. And now you tie back to the NFTs, where you have equity, and you can stake the NFTs, and you get a portion of this payout. Say again, right? The house always wins, but in this case, there is no house, and the benefit is to the people that just hold the tokens. Right, because you have everything that's over a period of time, it's burning, right? Because that's how these games are, and they have like say 98% payout, and some might have less, but it doesn't go to a certain centralized place or whatever. You can. The affiliates are also open to anybody. Anybody can be an affiliate, and you send your link to people, and you get 1% of all their bets, regardless if they win or not. It's not like tied to anybody. There's no like massive spending just to kind of get a value suck out of people interacting with it. But you have where even if you lose, you're contributing to the burn. So yeah, I mean it's still early days. Like Theo is just absolutely cracked. So definitely, give him a follow. Reach out to him. It's exciting times, and there's definitely big things that are coming. Staking was just launched. So yeah, so we're trying to think of how can we again package all these things, because the NFTs weren't necessarily part of that narrative, and people didn't really know how they were going to tie in. And now each NFT is equity within the framework of the party ecosystem. So again, every single part of it kind of ties into the mission and the vision. But yeah, definitely wanted to give him a shout out, because he's doing great stuff, and it's all bootstrapped by him. So he's grinded. Yeah.
So cool.
Awesome. Love to hear about it. Thanks for sharing.
Is it you and Theo? Anyone else on the team?
Yeah. So it's mostly my role is mostly back and forth, similar to how I would support different startups and product side of it. And then development side is Theo. Recently, we hired a front end person. Even with just that, like Theo can do most of the entire development himself. But definitely, as this scales up, I think he'll become more of a engineering lead if we want to go like more towards traditional things. But yeah, so currently behind the scenes, it'd be Theo, me, and then a few others that are more on the development side.
Sick.
Cool. Yeah, that's a great insight. Really neat.
Well, thanks so much for the time, guys.
Thanks for having us on.
Tons of gold here.
Yeah. Feel free to use anything. I love the few videos I've seen that you've done, Chris, have been really cool.
Oh, thanks.
And I really wish this podcast well. I'll do what I can to put you in touch with some other guys who will definitely go into the weeds with you on tech and protocol stuff, and can provide really expert insight into where all of this is going.
Appreciate that. I also just wanted to offer, like, kind of plug myself and offer my content creation skills. I'm kind of just hitting up the best projects and best devs in my eyes, and like offering. I'm just trying to create value within the ecosystem as I learn about the ecosystem and its projects. So yeah. Don't hesitate if you have a need for an edit, or you have a message you're trying to get out there.
Absolutely. I think what I love about crypto is the dynamic nature of it. You're not out here with a LinkedIn profile, going, "Hey, here's da, da, da." It's very personal. Hiring, networking, working together in this space. It's not like resume really. It's in the traditional sense. It's kind of like show what you can do, show that you're trustworthy, and we'll do it. Right. A lot of the projects that I've worked with in the past, right? It was just one guy, like he might have seen one thing that I've done, right? And these are like within Cardano, I was working with pretty much the top developers in that space as a relatively small account, just from a few interactions. And it was like there was no LinkedIn, there was no resume, there was no interview. They just said, "Hey, what do you think about this?" And then you just offer a little value. I would always do like one of the ways I would get in the door with bigger projects is just they might have like a branding thing, like, "Oh, we have this new idea." I would whip up a logo, right? "Hey, what do you think about this?" Right? And that got me in the door. And then it's like it just goes from there. So anybody like Chris wanting to work in this space, put your content out there, talk about what you're building, get on spaces. Spaces is such a great way to network. Even if you just get up here and say, "Hey guys, this was a great space. Thanks so much for hosting." Blah blah. Like you don't have to necessarily offer a super profound take. Just I'm always wanting more people to come up on stage who don't normally participate and just hop in, even if it's a basic question. It's totally fine. Hey, dude, I learned how to use internet identity from a space. I was like, guys, I'm confused about this one aspect of internet identity. Done. Boom. It's a lot of fun. So yeah, just keep doing what you're doing and build in public, as they say. Get on spaces. You're going to just meet people and network naturally, and people will hit you up. Hey, Chris, I saw what you did. I saw your video. I have a need for this, right? And it will go from there for sure.
Appreciate the insight there. I'm glad you spoke to that because I feel like there's a lot of intimidation in this space, especially for new people like me, like who are newer to crypto in general. And so a lot of people are shy. I'm personally shy to get up there because y'all are talking about like orthogonal persistence and vet keys and like what is all this?
Let me tell you,
I love hearing about it and love learning about it, but I don't feel qualified to come up and like speak on it. So I just stay in the background. But you want fresh people, you want, noobs to feel comfortable.
No, absolutely. I mean, ICPG is like it is a community space. That's where it started, was just let's talk about ICP and anybody can join. And I like it when new faces come up and I'm like, "Oh man, this person normally doesn't jump up." And like some of the relationships, and it's all from spaces. It's all just small accounts, big accounts getting up, and you just develop a relationship. You don't have like Spider, these other guys, they're way more qualified technically, right? If you don't have to be the brightest engineer in the space to contribute. Asking questions, just lending support. I mean, I would say the easiest way is just think of an insightful question. Think of if you can come up and ask a question that prompts a discussion, right? That's great, right? It's really, it doesn't have to be profound takes or super technical insights to be valuable. So I would definitely come up more, man. And yeah, look, if there's 100 people in a space, I remember years ago jumping on my first big space, maybe 300 people. And I had this idea. I was like, I wanted to share this about a wallet. It's nerve wracking a little bit. You're kind of like, oh man, like, but you just get used to it. It's so natural. And I just think about it like we're talking right now, it's just a couple of guys. We're all friends. We're sitting in a bar. Like a space is a digital bar, we're sitting around shooting the shit and just talking about ICP. It's not a big deal, and you'll get used to it. So yeah, next time we run an ICPG space, please come up, man, and we can talk about this. I'd actually love to just plug what you guys are doing and plug your videos, and yeah, we can do that.
Thanks for that, Zen.
Yeah.
Yeah, and those questions are like insane value adds, because it's kind of those things that might not be as clear can always be kind of chipped away. And we're not necessarily there yet as an ecosystem of being able to like even vet keys. Like I have no idea the technical stuff behind vet keys. I know it has to do with privacy, but yeah, having somebody like Spider, for example, right? Kind of go into more depths in those areas. And curiosity is I think the best motivator. So you already have all the capabilities. You have the experience as well. For context, like I got in, let's say in terms of ecosystems, 2017, I got into Cardano. Um, didn't join a space until 2023. So what is that? 6 years. I'm also somebody who's incredibly shy, and now through ICP of seeing another ecosystem start to grow, it is exactly like Zen said. You kind of you jump in, like the classic term of getting your feet wet, making a bunch of mistakes. Like I cough like way too much. Like it's so annoying. But I still I try every time to, I guess, cough maybe a little bit less and kind of
Nobody
run through
cares as
things.
much as you do.
Exactly, right. But that mentality, right, is exactly the same one that kind of bridges that gap to get in there. And every single person in the ICP space and in other spaces has something of value, because they are an individual, because they have these different experiences. It's extremely valuable. There's things that you guys know that I will absolutely never know, to the point that you guys do. And that has insane value. And then you come to these spaces or contribute, and now it's a collective value. And yeah, for a long time, I was listening to other people. And then in ICP, I guess, I don't know, like opened up a bit more. And then, yeah, through talking to different people, discovering different things, that goes a bit more into the acceleration movement, or accelerationism, which is a great movement to kind of, I guess, read up on, where like everyone can contribute. Doesn't matter what school you went to, doesn't matter where you came from, doesn't matter your excuse me, your credentials. But
Dude, preach
like
it. So good.
yeah, like it everyone is gains from the participation, because in silence there's no discourse, and we all get better through that discourse. And I think that's the beauty of Zen and the spaces. That's the beauty of Mike and Chris here. That's the beauty that we get from working together, and we go much quicker, and we go further. So it's incredibly valuable, and definitely jump in. Even if you say all the wrong stuff, it's a value add.
Yeah.
So good, man. Thank you. Very well said. What do you think, Mike?
I kind of want to say, I want to say something. We can leave this out, but on behalf of Swissy, the Sergeant of AI, Zen, the General, Chris, the Production God, I'm Mike ICP.